Well, welcome back, everybody, to the International Lighting Forum. Yeah, please do help yourself to water. This is our second roundtable. Light for spaces is the subject today. Yesterday we were looking at light for life, sort of, I guess, the relationship between light and humans. And of course today we're still looking at the relationship between light and humans, but in relation to spaces. So I've got an incredible 6 guests. Can you believe it? There's a lot of people on this panel. Well, thank you for being here, everyone. I'm going to do what I did yesterday with the panel, which is just get you, when you finish pouring yourselves water, just to give yourself a little introduction. Obviously, your names are on the screen here, but just tell us a little bit about how you work with light, your relationship with light, very briefly, and then we'll go into the round table proper. I'll start with you, Carla, and we'll go down the row.
Lucky me. So my name is Carla Wilkins. I'm with Licht Vision Design. We were founded in '97. I'm also at the moment president pre-elect of the ILD. And I think I can fill the 90 minutes with my attitude to work with light. So I think we should keep it more to a discussion. It's the general light and space and all our responsibility in collaboration.
My name is Hervé Descott. I'm the founder of l'Observatoire International. We work on different type of projects, from institutional to a little bit more commercial, a bit everywhere around the world. I have an office in London, Paris, Seoul, and I have a fabulous team. Okay.
Susanna.
Hi, my name is Susanne Antico, and I have an architectural background. And for the last 30 years, I've been in lighting with an office carrying my name. And since last year, I founded Lumit Studio. So my name is no longer, the name of my practice, a big step for me. And I'm mainly busy with outdoor lighting, public spaces that I find very interesting at night.
Hi, my name is Mariel Fuentes. Thank you. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, my name is Mariel Fuentes. I am an architect and lighting designer. I one of the co-founder of Maths Lighting Design Studio based in Barcelona. I wanted to share with you 3 singular things I think that is describe myself. The first one is I'm an architect inspired by light. The second one is I was born in Chile, but I developed my whole career about lighting designer in Barcelona. So I would like to say that I was adopted by Barcelona for the last 20 years. And the last one is I want to think that light is a technical tool with emotional consequences. And my main experience about lighting project, I think, maybe I can say that is in a residential and luxury projects and hospitality, but we have worked in many different projects and challenges all the time.
Thank you for having me. My name is Elisa Orlansky-Hours. I feel foreign for many reasons. One, I'm American and Argentine, but more importantly, I'm not a lighting designer. I'm a highly opinionated real estate marketer. I've made a career for the past 20 years at Corcoran Sunshine, helping developers and their architects optimize residential developments, from skyscrapers to resort developments all over. And our role is really to craft the stories that resonate with buyers. And so for us, lighting has really become the unsung hero, right, in terms of turning the ordinary into extraordinary. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
My name is Tim Ingold. I'm an academic, an anthropologist. I'm based in the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. For a long time, I've been interested in questions of how people perceive their environments and the sensory modalities through which they do so, and that's where my interest in light comes from.
We did this a little bit yesterday, actually. We sort of started off our panel looking, as we're going to be discussing light in its various guises over the next hour and a half or so, we looked at what light actually was. Piero Benvenuti yesterday talked about sort of when it was properly discovered in a way back in the 1860s, we started to learn more about it. I know, Tim, you were keen to sort of explain, and it was very clever. It was difficult for me to understand, but I'm sure everyone will get it. Was keen to understand, explain the difference between the source of light and the actual rays. So maybe you can sort of quickly explain to the audience that key difference.
Well, I warned you I was an academic and a bit of a philosopher, so here we go. I think perhaps I can explain it with a very simple question. What is the difference between lighting a candle and lighting a room? The light of the candle, we would say, is its flame. But from this flame, we think of rays emanating outwards, and as they reflect against surfaces of an interior, they will illuminate those surfaces. So as they're lighting the room is what happens when rays emitted from a source illuminate a surface. But lighting the candle is actually creating the flame itself. And my point is simply that we are always, when we're talking about light, confusing these two, the flame and the illumination. And I simply wanted to start by making that distinction clear. What are we talking about with lighting? Are we lighting a candle or are we lighting a room?
And that's interesting. Maybe I can sort of throw to the various lighting designers we have here. But do you think then, Tim, I'm going to ask you to maybe be controversial or not, but do you think that therefore means that we think maybe too much about the source, the actual, what is emitting the light, and not how light actually fills an entire room?
Actually, I think that we think too much about being inside a room, but that's another issue. That for me to understand light, I have to go outside and look at the clouds, at the weather, at the sun, not directly at the sun, at the moon, at the stars. And that's where I get my inspiration from.
Susanna, I'm going to come to you maybe. The flame, Tim was talking about this idea of a flame. It's, I don't know, it's like kind of, it goes back a long way into our history, before there was electrified lighting, obviously. As a lighting designer, is that something, do you still get inspiration from this idea of a flame when you're approaching a project?
Yeah, this is very interesting because the candle and the light of a candle is something that everyone knows. So while it's so easy to talk about daylight, everyone knows about sunset and sunrise and certain times of the day when the space, the built space or the natural space is most wonderful. When you start talking about artificial lighting or electrical lighting, it is difficult to find the words. But when you tell someone that you want to create a situation like the feeling you have when the space is lit by a candle, people start following you. And you can use these images to explain what you want to do with the space, because indeed we said the candle will light the space, but actually not all the space. And this is the interesting thing, because with a candle you are able to light a small part of the space. When we think about the monks where they used to work at night, they used to carry their candle and light what they needed, just that space, or they would move this candle to see the steps or to see the colors. And this is exactly what we do, or what we should do. So definitely, this is a fantastic instrument, it's a fantastic tool. And also, it makes us think this was really the first instrument to chase away those dangerous animals surrounding us when we were still in caves. So the flame has so many meanings, and definitely its warmth, it's something indeed very inspiring for all of us.
I'll ask you a quick follow-up though. But do you think that means if you talk about the candle, the fact that it only partially lights a space, do you think that's something lighting designers miss sometimes? They go for over illumination, the fact that, less can sometimes be more. We've talked about shadow a lot over the course of this forum. I'm just saying, can you draw more inspiration from the flame in realizing that maybe less can be more in terms of lighting?
It all depends what you need to do. It depends on the space, because when I said, okay, a candle will only light a small part of the space, but I'm imagining a very dark space, because if suddenly that space is made out of mirrors, or it's a really white space, then indeed with a little candle, I'm creating a really big effect. But I don't think that lighting designers forget about darkness. Is the idea of, let's say, a lot of people that cut situations of necessities in little blocks. Less is more, yes, this is general, but it all depends on what you need to do. What are the activities that you need to perform, and then the lighting is according to that.
Carla, you want to come in?
I would also like to add, as lighting designers, we have different demands. So the one thing is we have to provide a good lighting for the function. And the magic about the lighting designers is that they are not only doing the function itself, but they always have a very good narrative to the light setting. So, and that I would catch up to for Tim. I personally think you shouldn't divide that. It's both. It's an holistic approach, and we shouldn't be only inspired by daylight, because daylight is, in our perception, something which is also connected with other senses. It's not only a visual thing where we are trained in terms of lighting, but it is with how's the moisture, is it warm, is it cool? It is like different emotions in the overall sensual experience, while the lighting designers for the interior do not have those tools, only in the collaboration of the whole team. And I think we should consider that.
Tim, do you have a response?
I don't think I said you should only go outside in the daylight. At least I meant to say that you should get out at night as well and think about the difference between seeing the stars and seeing the blue sky, because that tells you a lot about what light might possibly mean. There's a lovely passage in Romeo and Juliet, the bit where Romeo is serenading Juliet under the balcony, and I'm afraid I can't remember the words by heart, but Shakespeare says something like this: if two of the fairest stars in the heaven should decide to have some business here and change places, so that these fair eyes would be in the heavens and those eyes in her head. It's a beautiful image of the way in which, when we see the stars, we don't see distant objects billions of miles away. We actually see with the stars in our head.
Maria, I think you wanted to say something.
I want to recover something that Susanna commented. Everyone can connect with light and message, because everyone has the experience from their own life. But the problem is that many times the society have very afraid about the shadow, about the darkness, and our duty as a lighting designer maybe is to give this information, because by physiological needs we need to understand the darkness and the brightness, the contrast, the accent lights. It's very good exercise for our perception or our mind or our feelings, or even because we need synchronize our body with the circadian rhythm, understand these changes, this gradient or many stimuli that we can get from the light. And this is a message. We need to create this coordination or this alignment with the nature from lighting.
So even inside, you need to do that. You need to have that alignment with nature.
Yeah.
And how do you do that then? Tell us.
Sometimes, or maybe the most of the time in the project, we need to understand the context. We need to understand the needs from each space. It's not the same illuminate in a hospital or a restaurant. Even in a restaurant, for example, if you have a space in the lunch time, you have one specific needs, but at the cocktail time, you have another. And the lighting atmosphere is different. If you understand these needs, you can create a narrative according these needs, according the space, according the possibility of the space, according of the client needs too. Because it's a complex equation, it's a complex formula. But if you go inside of the project, you need to consider all the factors and all the stakeholders too.
Hervé, I'll bring you in. Tell us how you approach the project, how you sort of try and bring about some of those things. And
first, I feel extremely fortunate to felt in love with that work. Okay, lighting, design, and lighting for spaces inside or outside, and I have the tendency of really thinking the light as a real raw material that it belongs to the space itself. You construct when I work inside. That's why I really try to understand as best as possible architect I'm working with, because the light is a part of the construction of the space. It's not something, I'm not lighting an object, or I'm lighting a space. The light belongs to it. And I think I try to hide as much as people the light in the space when I design it. Sometimes I hide it physically. You don't see the source, you feel it. You don't see it. But sometimes it's a part of the camouflage. It goes, the light is a part of, it's visible, but it's so designed with the essence of the space that it belongs to it. So it's really a part of the construction. So I think there is so many layers. You know, a good lighting design can enhance and make the space incredible and totally alive the way it should be for different programs, for different venue, for different purpose, can be really alive with it and should be alive with the space itself. And sometimes if you miss the target, it can destroy a project. You can have the most fabulous architect and the light design doesn't work in there. People are not so attracted to space. So I think the dynamic and the dialogue, and I think we cannot work alone. We work with, it's like working on a movie. You need so many people to achieve what we achieve as a good project. You need a great client. And I remember one of amazing architects that I met when I was very young, start my business, and he told me, before the client select you as a lighting designer, you better select your client. So I think it's very important to really choose the people to want to work for, because you will spend a lot of time, you will spend a lot of energy. And it's about like how together, the togetherness is so important in our job.
I think I'm going to bring Elisa in very shortly. I see Tim readying his microphone, but just what Hervé said, you're not. Put you on the spot there. No, but I think some of what Hervé was saying at the beginning about light and how he designs for spaces. I remember you saying when we chatted before, you were talking about light as this flow, the way light flows through spaces. So sort of, what would your advice be to sort of lighting designers? Maybe they don't want any, I don't know. Based on this idea of light as flow, how can people, I guess, design better lighting and spaces around this concept by understanding the way light moves through a space and is in motion all the time, I guess?
Because if we concentrate on the light source, so if we concentrate on the flame or a candle that's moving, the flame of a fire, the thing is that the light it gives off is flickering all the time. It's moving all the time. And And people who, for example, are hard of, who are partially sighted, often experience the atmosphere of what we might call a space as much thicker than we do. They don't see it as just kind of transparent, but rather like you're moving around in a thick fog. But that fog can be brilliantly light. So there's a sense, because they're not seeing objects very clearly, they don't see the walls, the ceiling, the furniture, they just have a sense of the milieu, the medium in which they're immersed, so that the light is something in which they are literally bathed. And particularly, it is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. Look at these spotlights here, absolutely sterile. You know, there's no movement, there's absolutely straight.
Keeping us alert,
it's
Tim.
clinical, and it detaches us from our environment. And I want to get across the idea that actually our experience of light is a sort of vision which doesn't objectify things, doesn't put them at a distance, but is actually something in which we are just as immersed as when we're listening to sound.
But how do you think, Tim, just to continue that quickly, how do you think lighting designers or architects or designers generally can better reflect that, which is quite a complex thing, but what would your advice be?
Well, I think the problem is that but actually in this word space, that so often lighting designers work as though what they're dealing with is an interior space. It might, for example, if you were a theatre designer, it would be the stage, and you're concerned with lighting the stage and what's going on there. And in the case of the stage, what's going on is an interior simulacrum of the outside world. But if you live in a cave, you're just going in and out. The world you're inhabiting is not an interior world as opposed to the world out there. It's the whole world. You go in and you go out as a matter of course. So I would recommend for lighting designers not to go back to the cave, but to remember that the world we inhabit is not a space enclosed by walls, but actually the entirety of heaven and earth.
I do promise to bring Elisa in, but Hervé's giving me the eye like he wants to say something.
But you can create space outdoor as well. Like when we designed the lighting for the High Line, for example, in New York, it's a full space and it's outdoor. And the original idea was to hide every single light source from the view and having the light below eye level. So all the light is really low, like it's about like 120 meter high, and lighting all the space. So when you walk the High Line, you can see and connect with the city around you. The magic of it, you are like 14 meters above ground, so you above the street light, you above the noise of New York, you have all the building next to you, and you walk safely on the park. And I remember when I did present the project to the mayor, Bloomberg at the time, he said, for once, we have the chance to light a park and not a path. And that was true, because the path was going through the park, and because of the size of the High Line, we could light the entire park itself. So that was magical, because when you go to Central Park, only the paths are lit and the park is dark. So that was a great remark.
I wanted to add something. One of the very common confusion that the society or the architects sometimes have is because they understand that the light comes for the horizontal surfaces, and they don't understand that you need to perceive the space through the whole surfaces, and sometimes you have more information if you illuminate the vertical surfaces. And it's not necessary that the light is everywhere. It's not necessary that only in the horizontal surfaces is the only place where you have the light, because you lost information. I try to explain my students, like, if you have only the light in the horizontal surfaces, you have the interrogatory space, you know? When you have only the dramatic light in the spaces, but you don't know anything about the other part of the spaces. That's why I think that your project is beautiful. That's why.
Thank you. But I think in any project, you need to give the sense of the space you are in. Either like I'm working on a museum or I'm working on a restaurant or hotel. In a restaurant, you need to give the sense of the room. And then the room can be dark, but if you have the sense of orientation, it's so important for the human being. So you really feel the orientation first, and then you do a little bit the playground in the middle.
I think we can say that you need to reveal the space with some key points.
And this happened with verticality.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think the reference of the High Line is brilliant because it really, the High Line in New York City, not to bring it back to New York, but really allows the skyline to be the canvas when you're on it, right? And it's so subtle, and you're right, it just disappears. However, the underside of the High Line, the lighting there now becomes the protagonist, and so it becomes sculptural and becomes a monument, right? So it's a very clever play in terms of how you achieved both, right? The discretion and the wayfinding versus the celebration of this structure, and really turning it around so that this remarkable cast iron intervention now becomes something that everyone wants to go up into.
So iconic. And I love the High Line because it's one of the non-commercial space that sees so many visitors in New York during the day and during the night. There's not even a cafe. And there's thousands of people every day walking there, so it's pretty good.
I want to definitely talk about outdoor lighting a bit later in our discussion, especially with you, Susanna. But I want to bring in Elisa as well a bit more, because obviously you said you're not a lighting designer. You market buildings. You market these incredible skyscrapers in New York and beyond. I'm just interested, as we're talking about lighting for spaces, how much does it govern, your work? Are you seeing buildings that are literally built in a way to take certain lighting into account? How much is lighting influencing the sort of buildings we're seeing going up?
That's a really interesting question because I think it goes back to what Hervé was saying about having the owner's report or the program really well defined, and so that's really where we come in. I would say 90% of the time come in before the architect is identified. And so our main role is to translate these market expectations and understand how to create a program that's very clear from the beginning. So a thesis for the building, what are the key objectives that we want to achieve with this building? Is this going to be a skyscraper that's visible from every aspect? We're working in New York, in Seoul, in Miami, in Argentina. Are you going to be able to point to it on the skyline? Or is it something very subtle and discreet, and we're purposely designing it for celebrities that do not want to be at the center of it all? So it's really looking at how do you create these kind of program recommendations and translated guidelines to allow for lighting to be transformative, right? So taking the architecture and either having it be something that becomes a protagonist in itself or very quiet. And as I said before, taking an ordinary building and celebrating it 24/7, 7 days a week, seasonally, what have you. But also allowing the user to adapt. And I think this conversation of really, the heaven and earth and the flame of the intimacy of a flame versus lighting a room is really important today, right? The adaptability, right? Especially when we're confined as, living and working and cooking all in sometimes the same room. And so how is that room adapting? So it's maybe the task lighting of, working from home to make sure you're lit for the, video conference. And then that space in just a matter of hours is going to translate into, maybe you're dining and creating a certain mood, right? So how can just one simple, from task lighting to ambient lighting, so putting together that narrative and wish list. And then most importantly, because, we're all stuck with these, right? So the interconnectivity of all of it, how can lighting be smart, right? How can it be sustainable? How can it actually make us feel like our life is a little bit easier, right? So integrating smart systems and, working very carefully in selecting your client that they're not going to value engineer every single dimmer that, is recommended. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned, thanks to Euroluce, is really the biggest kind of rule I'm going to take back with me is inviting these amazing consultants day one, right? We always request that the developer surround the table during pre-design and concept design with all these industry leaders, but lighting, regrettably, comes too late, right? So the building's already designed, so then we're just trying to like fix ways to either have it integrated into the building so it is discrete, but really it doesn't necessarily get as a conversation with all of you to design the beacon, to design those intimate moments, to have the intimacy of flame and really those moments. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm at least learning from this conversation.
Carla.
I'm very grateful that you are saying that, because my experience as a lighting designer, I always have the feeling we are very needed in the beginning of the concept, because major decisions will be done which you can't bring backwards, which have a strong impact on the lighting, on the space, on the overall appearance and the narrative of the project. And then there is a pause where the architect is ordering all his tools, and then we jump again in. But if we miss that first phase, it's really hard work afterwards, and to convince everyone that might be there was a mistake, and can we bring that back?
Especially when the architect brought you in, right? You can't say that, right?
So
Yeah,
I
we
guess
do.
That's my question, and is the lighting designer undervalued? Do you feel?
I wanted to add something to what we're saying, that the fact that we come in very early at the stage of the design can also help in saving so much energy and so much money, because on one side you have the necessities, on the other side you have norms, rules, but we know perception. Architects know perception too, but maybe we're not focusing on the same issues. And the fact that very often the way we provide the right light is it's a very simple thing, that perception, what will make feel people comfortable, what will invite them to work, because we very often now, you look, what's the temperature today? It's 7 degrees, but the perceived temperature is 10 degrees. And I say, what is this? No, it's actually sometimes 7 and you perceive 4. I say, who can say that? This is so weird, but it's true that also safety is the perceived safety. There are no rules. When are you safe? When you feel safe. And how do you feel safe? When you control the space, when you have orientation, and blah, blah, blah. So definitely our work is subtle, because 500 lux everywhere, maybe. You want 500, no, you want 100, you want 200, you want 700. So, rules, but it's a very interesting discussion.
But you're saying it's hard because it's hard to measure in a way, some of these things, that it makes your life.
It is impossible with your eyes, but you can with a machine, and there we are in troubles.
You can also measure it with your emotions, right? And I think that's the important thing that we need to remember, that really this is, how do you appeal to creating that mood? How do you kind of resonate with someone's emotions? And then also, how do you make service even better, right? So I think that's the other side of lighting, that it's not only how we experience it, but that how does it make everything in terms of the operational excellence that we all expect today, that how does lighting help us with that as well? So I think it's both sides of it.
Yes, but there is a big difference between spaces that need to be comfortable and inviting, and spaces that need to follow laws and norms. Because if something happens, an accident in spaces where norms and laws are valid, then you need to be more careful. So you need to work a bit more and have everyone following you, in seeing that maybe you are not really according to the norms, but everyone can see that what you're doing is much better. And often there is more flexibility into that. And that's very interesting. I think it's a really good victory for the whole group, because
I would like to add something. Yeah, because I think today we have great knowledge, more and more knowledge about what we do. The technology is evolving every single day, really fast. But I think always, and I always tell my team, I think the question, the very important question is the why. Why we are doing what we're doing on a project. Why it's helping to do some editing. There is a reason, has to be a good reason behind every single decision. You create a space for the mood, the feeling, for working, but there is at every time, oh, it's me. There is the why. And when you get the right at the right position, you can do some good editing on a project. And you can make the right decision with the candle, because the candle, it's very important at certain point. The mystery of the space is super important for your feeling. It has to be mysterious. But sometimes it cannot be mysterious. So it's like everything, like a curve, everything is important. I think. I'm back. Yeah, I think the why is important. Like, why you making that decision?
But in this sense, I want to connect with Carla's ideas. At the first point, for me, it's important to analyze the situation, analyze the needs. But the second point is create a concept from this analysis. It's very important because this is consistency of the project. This is the why you want to do something.
There's one thing to do before the concept, sometimes, is the vision.
Yeah.
You need, before a concept is already an idea of design. A vision is the holistic idea. Why and what I'm creating. What kind of emotion? It comes from the emotion. The vision comes from the emotion. And then from the vision, you go to the concept. You start to build up how you construct your vision. What element you need to build the vision. And then you go to the design aspect. You have like the vision, the concept, the design, and then the implementation of it. But there is, if you skip stage, you find a solution. I compete every day with my team, say like, every project has a solution. You have thousands of solutions for everything. I can light the room, like any room, anytime, anywhere. But is that the right way of lighting a room? You have to think about it. You have to have the vision. You have to understand the context, the architect, the design. You have to have a lot of conversation. You need to know why is the room created for, and why you want to create, what kind of experience you want to create.
Yeah. That's why it's the first step for the concept, and then you are able to create a technical solution and take decisions, because our final objective is create good atmospheres through light in the spaces for the people.
I want to bring Carla in. She wants to get in on this
I
conversation.
think it is. I think it's a little bit about wording, might be language, because there is what you is a vision, is for me a concept. So I think we are a little bit lost in language, and translation might be. And the other thing, I think for all of us, it is one of the greatest moments you have. If you have like a first concept sketch, and then you are going to the opening and you think like, wow.
I will respond to it. I think the concept already take a shape. It's already taking shape. When the vision is an emotion before the shape.
But for me, vision is included on the concept.
Yes.
Yeah, for that reason, it's like lost in translation.
I think you're gonna have to hammer out these differences off stage. No, I'm joking.
No, but it's good. Lighting start with words.
I want
to be able to describe emotion.
I'm going to move the conversation on slightly. I want to talk about technology in a bit, because we talked about things like mood and emotion, and obviously tunable white, LED lighting, all these things allow us to do some of this more easily. I'm going to ask Tim a question sort of related to technology first, then I'd love to hear from everyone their views about the use of. Tim, I believe you said somewhere that the bubble of the sort of digital revolution is bound to burst at some point. I just wonder what that means, especially in relation to the fact that we are sort of hurtling forwards in terms of technology. What could the implications be if you can apply a sort of lighting design lens to that? I'm just interested to hear your thoughts.
I don't think that the digital technology will last beyond 2130. That's
Wow.
because I apply the 150-year rule. Coal lasted from 1810 to 1960, oil from 1910 to maybe 2060, the digital from maybe 1980 to 2130. I cannot see how it's conceivably sustainable over the centuries, because the demands it's placing on the environment in terms of extraction of rare earths, in terms of energy consumption, in terms of space junk, is simply mind-boggling. So I think the important thing is we have to think ahead and say, what do we need to take care of today so that our descendants, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years from now, will have a decent kind of world to live in, and they will have the skills they need to manage in that world. Therefore, we have to look back a bit and think, well, how did people deal with their environments before electricity, before digital technology, before all these things? And that's why I always come back to the idea that for most people around the world, before electricity, wherever there was mention of light, something was burning. There was always a torch, a fire, a flame, a candle.
But that's not good for the
an oil
environment
lamp.
either.
It's not, well, in a way it's not. But on the other hand, the environment's kind of, it'll muddle along. People will muddle along. And so I think it's a mistake to assume that where there's light, there's electricity. Because the question that I kept wanting to ask you all when you talk about lighting design is, how much lighting was there, designed or not, before you started your designing business? I mean, presumably there was light around illuminating various spaces before you started designing anything. So what are you doing with that light? Are you editing the light that's already there, or are you creating something ab initio right from the start, or are you kind of mixing the two up, or what? I'm not a lighting designer, but I would love to know the answer.
Does anyone want to jump into that question from Tim?
Yes, I was wondering where shall I start, because there was so much sent into, yes. What do we do with the light that was already there? I work mainly in outdoor spaces, and when I have a good client, I start really big, in the sense that I do a master plan. And the master plan is a marvelous tool because it's like a music director. It will make it possible that all the instruments are coherent and are in proportion and are fine-tuned so that everything works, that there are no sopranos suddenly screaming somewhere that you don't hear the melody anymore. So, and I have been quite lucky lately to convince, it took me many years to convince some of my clients to work thinking about all the sources that are insisting on the same space, so that if everything is a bit subtler, lower, you won't perceive it, but it will be much more comfortable and interesting. So I don't know, was I supposed to answer first the question of the technology, because I'm taking another path?
No, that's okay. You go for it.
I'm going. So actually, one of the exercises we must do is that we must demonstrate that our installation is more efficient in terms of lumen watt. So I'm getting more flux, more light for less wattage. We managed to do that, indeed, but the real issue is that you don't always control everything. I remember a project where we were very careful in making a really harmonious environment. And then we had a meeting with the police. who said, no, this is a dangerous area. There has been some shooting, there has been some, so we need a really high illumination levels. And this was a big problem because all our calculations, all our thoughts, and all our scene, was in danger because of that security issue, the possibility of shooting high resolution pictures and see the face of the bad people running around. So there is a lot of work to do with the new technology. The technology is fast, and the culture comes after really slowly, because we really started with, wow, so much light. How many times I go to a square and I talk to the clients and they tell me, and the square is like this one. It's exactly the same situation, but there are no dark areas. It's all terribly lit. And they tell me there is not enough light. Why? Because you don't see anything. When you see everything, you don't see anything, and then you cannot make hierarchies, and you don't recognize the space. So I take away. And I'm starting to grow a bad reputation because it's too dark. What I'm doing is darker, lower, quieter. It's night. But the idea is more light, more safety, more light, more identity, more. But we are building on that culture. And there are a lot of public administrations, a lot of cities that are finally understanding that. For some reason, electrical lighting, artificial lighting was the glary one. Because we are so scared of this sun that there's disappearing. It goes away. It goes away. What is this? We are in darkness, and we are afraid because we are animals. So we accept glare as long as there is light. And now we are building a really good culture on this way of using artificial lighting. Now I can go on and on, so on.
Well, Elisa, you wanted to say something?
No, I would just, I'm an optimist, especially after the pandemic, so I like to take a little bit more of a utopian view. And we had a lovely conversation last night about how AI, right, as a tool and not replacing our professions. But I think also technology, how is it extending our day, maybe for good or for bad, right? But also, yes, it's taking up valuable resources, and yet at the same time, it's allowing us to be a little bit more sustainable with the way we light our buildings, motion sensors, in terms of circadian lighting, as you mentioned, subcellular spaces that would never get light. All of a sudden, you're in it, and you really kind of, it's a little bit of a loss of location. You don't know where you are because the lighting really is remarkable how, it changes throughout the day. And so I think actually, how can we start to look at technology as a tool to help us be more dynamic, be more practical, and yes, energy efficient, so that, the future generations are still here. But yeah, I think it's something to try to look at how can we all effectuate change within technology and lighting.
But I guess it shouldn't be technology for technology's sake, right? And I think you've said before, if you get into that loop, that game, by the time, in your case, a building is done, the technology's obsolete, or could be. So I think, is there a danger of sort of over-reliance on technology?
Well, and I also found it really interesting as you were talking, sound, an analog sound of a wheel was competing with light, right? So I did find it a little bit oxymoronic. Look, I think it's something that so many times, I won't say lighting designers, we'll say architects, try to have integrated, decorative lighting into the architecture or technology or AV systems or whatever it is. And the reality is, in 6 months, it's obsolete, right? So we try to be very careful with either the buildings that we work on or the interior spaces that we help with, and the sales galleries that we create, and just think about the flexibility and the adaptability of technology so that, you know, we don't hurt ourselves, because we all know this is a very long process, right? The design process, no matter how good your teams are, is still a long one, and the construction one. And then in my case, then it extends beyond because of sales and the market demands and such. So how can you strategically be integrating everything from raceways in the ceilings to modular LED, so that's integral, so that, you know, instead of every, you know, however many months that you have to replace incandescent, then the LED is allowing us, you know, a 7 to 10 year swapping out. So looking at ways to, you know, make those specifications, but I also, again, to Euroluce, it's the manufacturers, right? It's looking at what technologies they're producing in terms of their new fixtures, both soft and architectural, to be able to, you know, harness that kind of safety, so that when you specify something, and by the time it's purchased 3-4 years from now, you know, it's that one or even better, but it still is allowing for that adaptability and you know, lack of obsolescence.
Tim, did you want to say something?
I just wonder, aren't you presupposing a level of affluence that is probably beyond 90% of the population of this planet? I mean, what about the vast majority of people who have to hijack electricity wires to get any power at all? How about the people who are living in shacks? How about the people who are dealing with earthquake rubble? I mean, it just sometimes sounds as though this world of lighting design is another world from the one that the vast majority of humans are living in at the moment.
Yeah, and I would add also, like, it's why I think the process of design process is important. And it's why the concept and the vision have to be very important, because the technology, if the technology is a part of it, but not the essential part of it, it can always evolve. If you have your vision, if you want the space to be existing in time, you need to allow the space to evolve with the technology as well. So the placement of the fixture, the choice and hiding, or it's all about having that vision.
No, I was just going to say, Tim, I mean, obviously you're right in many regards that talking about technology is a luxury that not everyone has. So anyway, Carla.
But so I would have like a few comments to everyone. So to the last one, to light poverty, I think there is a great opportunity of technology to help if there is, like Olafur Eliasson had this art project, The Little Sun, where you buy one fitting and he gives one to the third world that they could have a light piece. So in our community of the ILD, we are talking about light poverty. It's not part of our discussion. It is present. So I think, of course, here at Euroluce, and we are looking so well and nice designed fittings, of course, we are on a different level, but as you said, it is part of our discussions. I think we have one member who had a great speak, especially about the Lebanon, where they had after the war no opportunity and only had electricity for several hours. So that was really one topic. So I think technology, and coming back, technology is, you can't stop it. So if we want to be romantic and sitting around a candle dinner and having only the candles, that is a romantic feeling, and we can translate it and we can bring the emotion. But I think in general, to say like, oh, the ongoing technology, we have to stop it or it won't be sustainable. I think our responsibility is to make it sustainable, bring the right discussions to it, have an aspect on our environment and the energy we need, use it for the right thing. But to blame technology, I feel like it's 100 years ago when the train came the first time and they said like,
But can we make it sustainable? That's the question, because the word sustainable gets thrown around so much, it no longer means anything. So you can sit here and say sustainable lighting, but it doesn't really mean anything, does it?
It starts already here. If you go through the fair, you see that the material changes. We had so much plastic and aluminum before. So now you see that there is sustainable materials which are recyclable. We have the circular economy. This is not from one day to the other, but we have the responsibility as the lighting designers to push for it, to push the clients and the architects that we work in a sustainable circular economy way and being responsible for the next generations. It's not for my life, it is for the next generation and the generation afterwards to train them to be sensible with it.
Yeah, and also there is rules now. We have code to follow, we have rules to follow, you work in California, you have the Title 24, which is extremely strict. You cannot abuse.
And for me, from my point of view, I think we can do exactly that Carla mentioned. If we have a conscious about that, we can take a strategic decision. For example, one of the changes that happened in the last years is that manufacturers are more conscious right now to replace pieces of the fixtures, of the lighting fixtures, not the complete lighting fixtures. This is a point that we can put check. This is a good manufacturer because it's sustainable. This is one of the strategies we can do. At the other point, maybe we can, from the associations, maybe we can have more possibility to go to the governments to create this change of the conscious about the standards are not very aligned with the needs of the spaces according the real requirement of the spaces. Because in my city, Barcelona, because the change of the technology for LED happens that there are many pedestrian roads are illuminated like a highway. And the argument is because we have a very low consumption. But this is not the reason. This is not a good reason to change the technology without criteria.
I want to bring Elisa in quickly, and then you, just because I want to talk about, this makes me think to bring in New York, because we're talking about sort of light pollution, we're talking about sustainability. New York, iconic skyline, but obviously quite a lot of consumption, light pollution. What's your take when you're with new skyscrapers that are going up? Are you conscious of not thinking about the environment, thinking about sustainability versus this is New York, we need to light that up, we want to show off our skyline. How do you balance that?
Is that the way you think of us? No.
I lived in New York for 6 years.
No, I know. First of all, this is so exciting, such a great conversation. And I think it's something that, especially to your point, is really how can you light up a building, right? So that it can be iconic, that you can see it, and it lights up, the silhouette of the building, and yet doesn't muck up the dark sky, right? Doesn't hurt the ecosystems, doesn't hurt the bird migration, or last night we were talking about bats, right? And so that's a really careful balance. And so again, I feel like I'm gonna call the architects that I work with on Monday and say, who's the lighting designer? And let's talk to them right now, right? Because especially with, light pollution, it's such an important thing. And yes, I work on luxury housing. I also work on housing for human beings. How do you subtly light the solids of the building, right? And so not, impact, let's say, the residents next door to the light, right? Because you don't want the light pollution inside the residence either. And you don't want the light pollution into the dark sky. So lighting the surfaces, more downlights instead of uplights. It's really, the whole concept of a curfew, right? so many cities around the world are really respecting that. So for, non-essential and, monuments, there's a time of the night that we all need to take a break, right? So the lights have to come down. And then furthermore with prop tech, right? Going back to, tech. I feel like T is a bad word now, but in terms of solutions to be able to have that, so that not only we can control the lighting and how it changes throughout the day and how it turns off, but also with certain skyscrapers, right? And maybe not so skyscraper, but like taller buildings, how potentially they can even change to honor a specific event or a holiday or a celebration, right? So all these things have to be carefully discovered with the design of the facade, right? So, as Hervé mentioned, like how can you have the light be a material that celebrates the form or the massing without, messing everything up around it or inside it? And it's a really, I think it's more of a question for you. How do we do this, right?
Carla, you want to come in?
I would, I think you hit a point which is really lighting designers, our community have to keep in mind. In former times, we did this outstanding holistic design, but nowadays lighting is also communication. It is like at Women's Day, everything is in purple. So it is like gathering around with the lighting. And this component of having that communication tool is very often underestimated, also with the clients. And once in a sudden, where we have all the technology, we are back to gels, which I think, oof, this is back to the future. And so we have, I think it's our responsibility to train also the clients, to make them aware you have a tool. It's not only a function, it's our narrative. It is also in a city, and if it is iconic, it is communication, and this is not only a one road, it's a dialogue. And I think we are not there, not at all, but I'm convinced that we can make it, and if we like coming together in like ILD, sharing up with the architects and the engineers and the manufacturers who are also doing sometimes design, bring them all in one table and say like, be aware what we are doing and do it very responsible.
I think it's also just a matter of not saying, but showing, right? Especially as we're talking about exterior lighting design, is to show, right? How does the building look on the ground floor, on the beacon, at night, at sunset, at sunrise, on a cloudy day, full of fog, as you described, right? So how can you start to show the imagery? And again, maybe technology can be actually a tool that can help tell these stories so that we're not just, mandating and you're actually showing a developer and a client and the stakeholders really how to celebrate those things.
Yeah, but we can insist, and indeed we can bring this cultural discussion as far as possible, but we are competent professionals, but we are people that want to work, and what we know how to do is lighting design. And if there is a client that has a clear idea of what he or she wants, if I have an ethical problem and I say, well, I don't want to do outdoor lighting anymore, then I can close my company. So what I try to do is indeed do the best I can, trying to get all the stakeholders present as early as possible. But if I don't do it, someone else will do it, and maybe much worse. So seeing that I have the competence of minimizing my impact, I try to do that. But indeed, the instruments I use, are they always sustainable? Maybe not. I use too much energy? Yes. But when a city tells you, I want that this iconic building is visible and represents our culture and the beauty of the city at night, I do my best, but I will do it. Because, and it's true that in outdoor spaces, it is quite difficult to find a balance because you have lighting signage, you have even red lights, you have all sorts of elements that you don't control, and forget that the city is going to tell the commercial unions shut off the lighting signs because they pay so many taxes. So we really need to keep on going on with our culture and to be a bit more humble but I'll try to be very quick. What is a big issue in cities is that light is independent. You put a light on, great. This is gray, it reflects light. This is shiny, wow, it will have a direct reflection. So street lighting that now, as you said, with LEDs is so aggressive and so bright, starts competing. So can you tell me why my city suddenly is cut in two? Or even worse, I only see horizontal planes. The vertical is gone because, yes, I can direct the LEDs to the ground. Where am I?
I would like to.
Yes.
First, I think this is our job as designer to find solution, okay? That's really the first thing we have to do. I'm not an artist, and I try to find solutions on problems with design. And recently, to answer to one of that problems, so we love to light nature, we love to light trees, and for years we used to apply the trees. Okay, so it was easy, it's nice. You create verticality, you create like a background, it's so nice. But recently we had to find a solution to light the tree. So what we did with manufacturer, we create like a light fixture that you can attach to the tree. So we bring the fixture in the tree, and instead of lighting the trees up, we light the tree down. And it's nice. And on the top of this, you create beautiful shadow on the ground. So I think our job is to find this kind of solution. We have challenge, we have problematic every day to resolve. And we need to go understand the problematic and try to find the best answer.
And I think, I don't know how is your experience as a lighting designer, but maybe we have the coincidence in different cases that we found with clients. When lighting design is a problem where the main important thing is the money, we have a problem. Because
choose your client before the client chooses you, okay?
In the schedule of the different parts of the project, lighting maybe is the first budget that the project manager cut. If we have this perspective, if we have this feel of project, I don't know you, but for me it's, okay, good point to start. But if we work with the client with conscience about the good light, it's a good future for the project, it's a good image for the city, it's a good solution for the clients or the viewers. If you have lucky to have this feel of project, you can do in the best way your work.
I disagree, really I disagree, because I think, I think, and I'm 100% convinced about that, we have to design to budget. It doesn't matter if it is $1 billion, $1 million client or it is like someone who has only a small budget. As lighting designer, I think we are skilled to have the solution even on a small budget. It can't be so elaborated. It has to have other materials. But I think we are talking about light and space, and for that reason, I think our responsibility is really to bring a better light quality to the space, even if there's a low budget or a high budget. Of course, with a high budget, I can buy chandeliers from well-renowned, and it's a masterpiece, which is a piece of art. But I can also, for a client who has a low budget, I can just point out a focal point. So, I think only we as lighting designer can. I think if we are trained, if we can communicate the quality of light and the opportunity of dynamic lighting and lighting control, if we can bring it to the whole community, we are really a major step forward. And maybe we are delivering the pieces of excellence, but it is inspiring to the other community. And I think that should be really one of the key things.
And I absolutely agree. I mean that we can have a very huge project and maybe with high budget, but in opposite way, we can have a very good project with a very low budget. Both are absolutely excellent, maybe. But it's not about money. It's about the focus only in the money, that in the budget, when the clients put the energy only in save money and not understand the future result of our project. This is the meaning that it's exhausting for us.
Well, the clarity at the beginning of the project is very important, to know the goal on the budget. It's challenging on a project when you start with kind of open budget and then you end up with a really clear budget. So if you start to change and shave, if you shave more than 20%, it's not the same project anymore. It would have been better to design with the budget in mind to fit the project with the budget and not cutting, because the cut doesn't work.
Right, and
There's
so that
the
goes
bleed.
back to vision, right? Because at the end of the day,
yeah.
concept design cannot happen without a vision and a budget, right? Just because I feel like if those two factors are, then you can kick off concept, right? Because you know not only what are you designing to, but what your limitations and the why, you know?
I'm going to interject just briefly because, just briefly, just because we've only got time for a little more discussion. Then I want to try and give the audience a chance for some questions. I just wanted to finish. We've touched about it, but I just sort of wanted to go over it one last time. This sort of social side to lighting design, and we talked about context, of course. But is there something missing from the social side? And I might ask you, Colin, and see maybe afterwards, Tim, what your thoughts are on the social side of lighting. But could we be doing more to really tailor our lighting to specific places and communities? I remember you, Colin, you sort of said, Scandi low lighting, cozy isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all for the whole world. So can we be a bit more nuanced in... I feel like Hervé wants to respond to that as well. I've opened a can of worms with my closing questions. Anyway, Carla.
I was on a board for a European lighting project about elderly people. And one of the conclusions were, if the lighting improves in the urban space, once in a sudden the elderly people are taking place again in the social life. And they are not staying at home looking TV, might be Netflix. You never know if they are also the digital nerves. But to engage people, and I think in this time it's really important that we are coming in real life together, not on our iPhones, not on Instagram, that we talk to each other, having experience together, and I think light in the evening hours could be a very good opportunity for that. And this project showed and proved that, and it was a strong recommendation that we do master planning and also having a look at social structures in the areas where we are planning.
So sort of this ability to instead of everyone having their own lights, being on their phones, this ability to sort of gather around a single source. Tim, maybe I'll throw you. Did you want to add something, Carla?
I only wanted to say, I mean, this is a little bit the dark side of the dark sky movement, looking at the stars, because the bugs, the turtles, and the bees really love the darkness and the very warm light colors. But I think we should also consider in the dark sky movement the humans. Sometimes I have the feeling we are forgetting that. And engaging people coming together. We are working at daytime, so in our evening hours, don't meet indoors, especially in the southern countries. You could go outside and have a great time being together in a high qualified lighting design.
Yeah, but even because in some country they work very late at night and they work a lot. And you can create a really great evening mood in an office that you enjoy to be in the space to work even after hours. I think it's like creating. I believe it should be jovial. It should be playful. I think we have really a chance to work with a media which is so intangible that you have to play with it. Has to be lighting means lightness and happiness, and the process of design has to be also in this you can offer many different aspects, but should be on the last.
Can we bring the anthropologist in briefly?
I really have to mention that, because what you are saying is going back to the in the office, going back to the bubble. What I'm saying is bringing the generations together and having a social conversation between people who are working in the manufactory and in the office or in the supermarket or the other hairdressers. Coming together, having the social component. I think as lighting designers, we have to keep that in mind.
I did fieldwork over 50 years ago in Lapland, in northernmost Finland, where of course it's pretty dark for one half of the year. There was no electricity at that time. We had paraffin lamps, candles, and a sort of gas-powered thing. And that winter time, when it's dark, is the most sociable time of the year. And we would gather. It is a time for storytelling. It is a time for gathering around a pool of light, but also it's a time when you register the difference between the new moon and the full moon, because during full moon times, it's as bright as daylight, except everything is black and white instead of in color, more or less. And you have the northern lights. You have all of this, a real incredible light show, and none of it is designed by anybody. It's apart from the
fact
that's
an advantage of geography as well. That's not something you can necessarily replicate all over the world.
No, but the thing is that, well, then I said, well, none of it is designed by anybody, but actually it is, because people, as they go about their everyday lives with one another, are actually designing as they go. They're deciding where they're going to put themselves, who are they going to be with, where is the paraffin lamp going to hang, are they going to go out or stay in? That there's a sense in which ordinary social life is itself a process of design, in which people bring about in an improvisational way situations which are conducive to the task at hand, whether it's storytelling at night or going fishing in the summer or whatever it might be. So I'm still curious as to know where then does, if everybody's designing as they go along, just as I design breakfast when I lay the cutlery on the table and put the bowl out, then where does the designer really come in?
I would say also it's extremely cultural. I remember working a few years ago on 2 projects at the same time. One was in Finland, in Helsinki, for the museum Kiasma in Helsinki, and was going from Helsinki to meet with people and then to doing another project in Hong Kong. So first project in Helsinki, it was in the winter. It was nice. We go to the engineer's office And the light was bright, but in the middle of the table, they would put a candle, even during the meeting. So that was a good instinct. And the relationship with the candle was very important because it was not to light the space, but it was to create the right mood in the space. And then I was flying from Helsinki to Hong Kong, and I would meet with another bunch of engineer and architect, and God, it was like a freezing room. It was all bright, like 6,000 Kelvin, and they want to feel cool because it was so hot in Hong Kong outside. So bringing like a large quantity of cold lighting would bring people like more chill. And you know, it's all depends also for where you
context.
are, the geographic, and the need to look for the right sensation.
Well, I think it's, to answer your question, I think the designer is the tour guide, right? In terms of, no, but it's a responsibility for the architect, for the interior designer, for the lighting consultant, lighting designer, in terms of, you know, how do you create that outdoor space, that where will the fire pit be, so that, you know, and it doesn't have to be a trained designer, it can be anyone who knows that the fire pit needs to be this distance from the tree, or protected by the wind, or where can you add more windows to bring a more natural light. And I think that we need to trust the design community more to be that guide. And I think you're bringing up really important points as to how can we start to activate both inside and outside with daylight, with nightlight, and also, you know, with the lighting that is created by these designers.
I'm going to try and bring in the audience because I'm aware our ticker is ticking down. The time has flown by. Let's see if anyone wants to ask some questions. If people are too shy, I'm hoping they won't be, we can always continue our conversation. But please, any hands raised for any questions? A hand over there. We need a microphone. If you can just say your name and where you're from and who your question is directed at, if it isn't at the entire group. If it's at the entire group, we may be here a while. We might not have that much time for questions.
Hi, I'm Kevin Shaw. I'm from Edinburgh, Scotland. Tim, a couple of things you've said are really concerning me in a way, and certainly I'd like you to expand on them. Your suggestion that the technological age is going to end in 10, 15, 20, 30 odd years kind of worries me a bit, because I think we have become so dependent on technology and electronics and computers. I'm kind of wondering that your second comment that we are all designers means that you believe that we're actually going to be going back to carrying our own candles around. I mean, the technology thing is the interesting thing to me at the moment, because I think we're so bound up with it. And lighting, we have been pushed down a route in the last 20 years from having more or less natural incandescent lamps, things that actually glow like fire, to these entirely technological things that are, you know, electronic marvels, but produce something less than what I would consider to be a natural light. So, Tim.
I said it, I didn't say it will collapse in 20 or 30 years. By 2130, that is in the very long term. And of course, something else might come in its place, of which we have no inkling at the moment. So heaven knows. But I would question the sense that if we, in the future, do end up depending on candles more than we do now, whether that's necessarily going backwards. Let's imagine a very sophisticated kind of candle. Let's imagine candle technology, perhaps not paraffin candles, but something else. Let's imagine that paraffin technology takes over, and that we become used to the idea that that light is fundamentally mobile, that we carry it around with us as with a handheld torch. And that we organize our social life in that kind of way. We don't necessarily have to think of that as a regression, and I very much reject the idea that talking about candles is being romantic. It's got nothing to do with being romantic. If you happen not to have any electricity, or next time you have an electricity cut, and all your lights go out, and you pull out the candles because you need them, don't start thinking that that's a romantic thing. That's
This is happening.
it's
What you
happening all the
say,
time.
It is
yeah,
happening
indeed.
already. That
Of course.
there are areas where you can't put a lighting system, and you must go with lights you carry, and that are solar operated, and then with a battery. And indeed,
Yeah.
because for many reasons, so this is actually happening,
happening.
already.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So,
I would like to add on the candle. So, in a way, it's an embarrassing story. I did a club which had 13 chandeliers, Murano glass, and all were lit by candles. There was a dinner. The candle had a special size, so when the candle was burned down, then the LED could run off in a color range, whatever. But, and that is the backfall of the story, so we, the first three days, everyone was amazed. The candles, lovely. And then the first dripping on a high-brand clothes happened on a woman, and she wasn't happy at all. So at the end, and I think they had to look for the
Maybe
clothes.
that's a positioning issue.
So the thing is, I tried it, but at the end, nowadays, there are no candles anymore because the club says, like, we go through all the trouble with the candles. We don't want to lose clients. So I think your approach, and this is my point with the romantic, I tried it in a project. I failed because they are not using it anymore. They're putting like lights on it from the outside. And I can't share this happy moments about bringing it to professional projects. Hospitality, yes, but as I said, I failed with that club.
Okay, let's go to another question. Who's got a question for the group? Anyone? There's someone down here at the front. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is Alvaro from Spain, Alvaro Coelho. First of all, thank you very much for all of you. It's a very professional panel, and the conversation has been amazing. You know, I miss sometimes that everything that gets talked in these talks gets out of here and gets spread and let people know how much they should really appreciate light. I think it's part of our profession to actually end up having to explain a lot. Explain the value of light, explain the value of what we do, explain the value of every process that the project goes through. And I would like to catch this part of education and general public that you mentioned before about the society. Is society prepared to understand all this? Should the society know more about this? How much percentage of your time do you actually spend on educating people?
That's interesting. I guess a question about do you have a duty to sort of inform the public better? Susanna.
You know, it's interesting because I have the habit of taking pictures before a project. I go around and I take pictures. And in the first presentation, I show and I tell my client, your city, the neighborhood is like that. For the first 2-3 slides, they're excited. They say, really? Wow, it's like that. I need to go and see. And then, little by little, they get very upset because they start saying, that's no way. No, that's too much. No, I don't believe this. So I stop. I know I've learned that. But then I keep the slides, and then when the project is finished, and if it's a successful one, everyone finds it normal. It's normal. I look, is it different from before? But everyone is outside now, everyone is having a beer, and is having fun, and they're hanging out, and there are more business growing. And then I said, but remember, it was like that. Now that's not possible. So we see that cities that learn the lesson indeed also spread it, and this is also some kind of, education, because we get unfortunately, our community talks too much to ourselves. And we use sometimes a vocabulary that is too difficult to understand, so we should change also the way we talk about space and lighting. But indeed, a lesson learned in cities with the Euroluce organization, they're very proud of some of their acquisitions, and they spread the word. And I have to say that in Europe, this is going quite well, quite well. We stopped shouting, and we are going into another direction. It takes time, yeah.
I think I have a short or very summary about the answer. It's about creating a strategy. Depend of the client. You have to create a strategy or a plan to convince these people that what advantage will come from your project. Because if you have this advantage about to say, this is the current reality, this is not good, or this is our advantage, if you implement this solution, we can get a new reality and many good ways to live this space. I think the main problem is it's in public spaces, because when you work in a private project, maybe there are many interests from the client. But if you explain very well your advantage, that working together, maybe we can have a good plan for together.
Ove, did you want to say something, or are you just holding me?
It's a part of the work. We also educate our clients every time. You know, it's a part of the dialogue. I think we engage the conversation very early on, try to answer the why we're doing what we're doing, how we find a solution together, what is the proposal, what is our proposal, why uniformity maybe is not an answer, why you need a little bit of shadows, why you create what we create. Like we want, create space where people feel right at the right place and at the right time.
Create a dialogue.
And I think the reality is, in hospitality and restaurants and residential and the public spaces, we don't always know the end user, right? So I think, to your question, and going back to what Ed prompted us at the beginning, is the difference between light and lighting. And I think that's all of our responsibilities now, to not only educate our clients, but also start to think about how, people don't get that wax drop, right? And really start to engage with things that we can control. No, but I think it's a brilliant reference, and I think within those stories, that's where we learn. And I think all of us learning, and hopefully Ed and Tim are gonna write about it and teach about it, because I think this is something that this is our opportunity to change the generation. So hopefully by 2130, there's solar-powered something helping us through, but
and we would have changed those generations. The screen's been flashing 0 at us. I think, sadly, we're out of time. Thank you to this amazing panel that I feel could have gone on for longer still. So thank you very much for your time. A riveting conversation. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you
for being here. Thanks, everyone. It's great.